Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. We hope everyone survived the storm yesterday, and more importantly, we hope everyone has power. That seems to be the big issue around here. So welcome and thank you for joining us on our webinar today. Jim, if you go to the next screen, I'm Tony Hornacek with Scantech, and joining me is Jim Fox from Trino, our document management software partner. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the upcoming policy changes in the municipal records retention schedules and how this will affect you. We're also going to share some information on digital migration best practices and how to get started, as well as to show you a brief demonstration of our Trino document management software. So what we're doing just before we get started, we're recording this presentation, and we're going to send a link for a landing page to all the registrants that contains this presentation, as well as some other spreadsheets that we're going to be talking about that hopefully should be beneficial to you. But before we get started, I just wanted to note that we welcome your questions, and we ask that you type them in the question section, and we'll either address them during the presentation, or if they're a little lengthier, we'll do it at the end of the section. So on that being said, let's go ahead and get started. As many of you know, the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, through the Pennsylvania State Archives, provides archival and records management services to county and municipal governments. So last year, in April, the Pennsylvania County Records Committee issued an update to the policy regarding the form of permanent recordation for judicial and county offices. And basically, this new policy allows for PDF-A electronic documents to replace hard copies for permanent record retention. And as you can see, there's actually a link to that policy document that you'll get when you get the actual presentation if you want to take a look at it. So now, this year, the Commission advises that the municipal policy will follow suit in allowing PDF-A electronic records to be an accepted format for retention. So what this means to you is, assuming the new municipal records policy emulates the county update, which we would understand it will, first, permanent and other records can be retained in digital format in PDF-A, and more importantly, the municipal records manual contains about 274 record types. A third of them are permanent, half of them are 7+ years in retention. So with that in mind, migrating to a digital format now becomes even more attractive if you can ultimately dispose of these hard copy originals and free up all that space. So there will be some specific procedures to follow concerning quality control, security, storage, and we're going to touch on them briefly. So first, notification to the Commission. As with any agency migrating from a hard copy to digital, there is going to be a process, probably some forms to complete. That's a copy of the county form to obtain approval for digital migration and destruction of your records, and we could certainly help anybody with that. Secondly, it will be PDF-A format, and the A stands for archival, which basically prohibits features that are ill-suited to long-term archiving, such as linking fonts and other things. So that's the designated format for archival. And finally, quality. The county policy clearly states that each image of every page and each metadata field of all scanned documents must be inspected for quality, and that's going to be a critical component, of course, especially if the originals are actually destroyed. So the next area too is storage that we want to talk about, and this is critical because this is basically where your critical data is going to be housed, and they're requiring 3 separate copies of the database. One is a security preservation file, which is in essence a pristine copy. The second is the access copy, which is a working copy that can be used on a regular basis. It could be on any kind of portable media even. And finally, there's a backup copy of the security preservation file, which is actually at a separate geographic location, obviously for backup in the event of disaster recovery requirements. But I did want to note that these 3 database requirements are particularly if you're working with an on-premise or server-based solution. a cloud-based solution or a hosted solution really addresses all of the requirements, and that's what we're going to talk about with our Trino cloud-based solution a little later in the presentation. So now we did want to touch briefly on the Pennsylvania Municipal Records Retention Manual. We've worked with this a lot in helping some of our customers do records retention investigations and such, and we know it's a challenge to navigate and determine retention periods. The index itself contains 15 pages with 535 separate listings and 274 distinct record types, and then the manual is 55 pages and contains 16 separate citations. So briefly, just we want to run through the steps in finding a retention period for a particular document. First, you need to look up the record series in the index out of those 500 plus and find out which one it is, based on your alphabetical listing. Secondly, you turn to the citations and you browse down those 16 citations and find out, which one it is, which department, payroll, planning and zoning, administrative and legal, et cetera. And then the third step is you go to the actual 55-page manual and find the citation section and find your record within that, and then look and get the retention period. So what we've done, again, just because we thought there's got to be an easier way, we've created a simple spreadsheet. It's an Excel spreadsheet that we did, it's not rocket science, but it did take quite a bit of labor. It contains all 500 different plus lines in the left-hand column of the document types. The second and third columns are the citation and the series, and then the ensuing columns are the actual retention period, going from permanent all the way down to 90 days. So the beauty of this is that you can quickly and easily search your record type using the find function in Excel, and it'll take you to all the hits that you get, and you can pull your record type out and then instantly be able to reference your retention period. So we hope that this would save you a lot of time if you're looking to manage your retention schedules. And again, we're going to send this to everybody who registered in that landing page. So before we go into best practices at digital migration, we did want to touch on some of the benefits of scanning, and we know that these can vary based on importance depending on individual customer situations, but I will say that the most common one we find is people want to free up valuable space. They want to get rid of those file cabinets, those shelves, those boxes of documents, and make that space more available for other needs. But hand in hand with that is, with the next item, is having access to those records. Depending on your filing system, we've seen everything out there from very nicely filed records to stuff that's, I don't know how people find it. And if you scan and index your documents, put them in a document management system, basically search and retrieval can be accomplished through a couple quick clicks of a mouse, and you have your documents. And of course, protecting against loss of data, that kind of speaks for itself, because you don't have to handle the paper anymore. Responding to audits and information requests from constituents, again, through a couple mouse clicks, this can be accomplished. And then finally, another key one is disaster preparedness. God forbid, in the event of flood or fire or any other disaster, scanned images really, supplement your continuity of operations plan, and will make those records available to you. So with that in mind, let's say you've gone ahead and made the decision to transfer into a digital environment for your records. Here are some of the key considerations. One is we want you to be able to identify the scope of the records that you want to scan. Do you want to scan everything, or do you want to start with a more manageable section, maybe a particular department? Again, we work with a lot of townships and municipalities, and we start with oftentimes property files because they have a permanent retention period, and they generally take up the lion's share of the documents, it seems like. But that's a key component. Secondly, we highly recommend seeking a professional assessment from a qualified service bureau provider to get an idea on volume and cost estimates. And then, of course, it's important to establish a key internal contact, or who's going to, in your office, kind of manage the project. Doesn't require a lot of work on their part, but someone who can coordinate with that provider as the project's being handled. And then when you are working with the outsourcing provider, again, you want to determine the scope. You want to talk certainly about a document management system to facilitate search and retrieval, provide security, audit trail management, retention, and control of your scanned images. Whether they have one available, if you have one already in place, that's a key component, of course. And then another item is determine the index values for search and retrieval. This is key because if they're not indexed properly, regardless of being scanned, it's not very helpful. And then also, how do you want to dispose of the documents once they're scanned and validated? With the new policies upcoming, that could ultimately be destroyed, which could be a good, nice consideration if you want to free up space. And then project timelines and other details like boxing up files and logistics of pickup and delivery, which are all key components. So, next slide, we always like to just show this just to get an idea of how we calculate volume estimates real quickly. A standard box contains about 200 pages or pieces of paper. There's about 150 sheets of paper per inch or 1,800 per foot. Your vertical file cabinets, a typical 26-inch deep drawer, contains about 3,500 pages. And then the lateral file drawers, and I know they vary in width, but a typical 36-incher contains about 5,500 pages. And that's basically how we calculate when we estimate volumes. So next slide, if you're looking to engage with a service bureau or outsourcing provider, here are some key points to consider that are pretty important. One is experience. How long have they been doing this? How many years in business? And then is document conversion their core business? I've seen some organizations where they have a scanning department that's a little room with a couple scanners and 3 people, and that's kind of a recipe for disaster. Do they have local government references? Have they done this for agencies in the past? Security and chain of custody is critical. Are they a CoStar's contract holder? Have they been vetted by CoStar's, and can they provide excellent pricing for you? Can you tour their production facility? That's important. If any vendor worth their salt will allow you to come in and visit and show you their operations. What are their quality procedures and operational best practices, and what's the tenure and qualifications of their project managers and department heads? Do they have project managers? And then finally, a real important one is how do they handle file retrievals from records that have been pulled for scanning? Say, for instance, you have boxes of property files away to being scanned and you need to access a record. Do they have a system in place for being able to pull that record and scan it and email it to you, or putting it up on an FTP site to get it to you quickly? And if so, what is the cost? So they're just some considerations, but they're very important ones. So next, we just wanted to share some key components of the conversion or scanning process. And we like to do this, especially for folks who are considering trying to do it themselves, because it illustrates the processes required to do it properly. And I won't belabor this, but quickly, the document preparation phase is the first one. It starts with labeling the boxes, creating an index of the files in the boxes, and then preparing the paper, basically removing physical binding elements like staples, clips, Post-its, binders, repairing torn edges to get them through the scanner. Second phase is the document scanning. Here we have about 60 plus scanners that do different projects better than the other, and we optimize the hardware for the project and get the team in place to get the project done. Third is quality control. We do check every image against the original for accuracy. That's a key component. And the next step on the next slide is the indexing and data entry. And that's a key component. Obviously, this is how you're going to search and retrieve your documents. And we do that, we validate that against the actual individual record from a quality controls perspective, and we track everything, as you can see. So quality control and tracking procedures are really implemented at every phase of our production processes. So I want to share one more slide that I want to talk about is indexing and unitization. And these sound like some obscure terms if you're not in the business, but these are where our customers seem to have some struggles in terms of figuring out, what they want to do with their documents. And indexing is basically the data fields that will be associated with the image for search and retrieval within the document management system. And I'll use example of property files. So a typical property file folder might have a street address and a tax parcel ID number on it. Those would be the two index fields for searching that we would recommend that we index for you. Typically 2 to 4 fields per record series is what we find. The more the fields, the greater the cost, because that's more labor to enter the data. But we also do ask, if we always ask if you have a database available. Again, sticking with the property files example, maybe you have a database that lists the address and other information, including the tax parcel ID number. So that way our operators only have to enter that parcel ID number, and then we can merge in the property address and thereby get it done quicker and save money for you. Second consideration, which is critical, is OCR, optical character recognition, which basically allows for full text search on computer-generated documents. And OCR has gotten to the point now where it's about 99% accuracy rate. It's very good. And the beauty of that is it can eliminate the need for a lot of additional indexing, because now you can go to that document and search within the text for the words that are applicable. And then finally, unitization. Unitization goes hand in hand with indexing to determine what is considered a digital record. Again, sticking with property files, most commonly we do at the folder level. So you have a file folder with for the property file with the property name or the property street address and ID number, and then all the documents related to that, whether they're violation notices, applications, permits, etc., are within that folder. Typically, we'll scan that entire folder as one multi-page PDF, index it with the street address and tax parcel ID, and then you can search within that folder with OCR. Now, this can vary depending on different document types. Again, that's property files. HR records could be the employee name, employee ID number, and then sub-tabs with document forms, application, consistent files that are for every employee. Now, the key point there is when we start getting at a lower level like that, they have to be easily identifiable, because if our operators are going through and trying to determine every page what kind of document it is, that can get very tedious and, of course, very costly. So the lower the level of unitization, the greater the cost really is to you. So we try and make recommendations on that. And then the last portion here we just wanted to touch on for you, and this is another spreadsheet that we're going to make available to you via that landing page. This is return on investment. Basically, we're going to take a look at the manual processes. Jim, if you can go to the next slide, that are involved in basically dealing with your paper. And you can see, I'm not going to go through every one of these line items. It's essentially, there's 5 key areas that we look at: filing and retrieval, misplaced documents, lost documents, copying and printing costs, and space. And this ROI calculator really takes a look at each one of these components, how much time you're spending in each of these areas. And of course, at least in the case of space, how much space. But for instance, if you look at the top one, filing and retrieval, item number 1, we look at, how many files are stored each day. Number 2, what is the time required? And then 3 is to calculate, how many minutes each day is spent on that. So, and item 7, we look at retrieval as well. We calculate a total of 40 minutes a day spent on filing and retrieval at an hourly salary of $15. And you can see it's about $210 per month is being spent on filing and retrieval. We go down to each category, and you can see at the bottom it totals it. And in this particular instance, about $586 is being spent monthly on some of these manual processes. Now, can you eliminate all of that? Probably not, but it does help to justify ROI when looking at a digital migration. And again, these are fillable fields for your own information, and we'll make this spreadsheet available in the landing page. So now I'd just like to take a quick minute to briefly talk a little bit about Scantech, who we are, what we do. We're experts in scanning and document management, headquartered for over 50 years here in Willow Grove, PA. We've got a 30,000 square foot secure facility, 150 plus team members working 2 shifts. Security, chain of custody, and quality are really our top priorities, and we're definitely a CoStar service provider and contract holder. So next slide, what we do is basically we scan everything from any size paper, shape, or condition, fragile historical documents, large format plans, meeting minutes, property files, financial records, HR files, microfilm, microfiche, everything from a cabinet to a full warehouse. We have no real minimum. And then our services are backlog and day forward scanning. Backlog is, of course, the stuff that you have in the cabinets and boxes and shelves right now. That's great. Once we get that done, we obviously you want to have a system in place to handle your documents that are coming in and created on a daily basis. So they're digital, and we help you with that in getting them into your document management software. We do scan on demand, workflow solutions, data conversion. We can, if you already have a document management system, we can import the images and metadata into any system. And when you work with us to put Trino in place, we help you with obviously handle the installation, training, and support. So real quickly, I just wanted to show you a snapshot of some of our local government customers on the next slide. Basically, just for your reference, some of the folks we work with here in the region. Finally, if you decide that this might interest you or you want to take a look at this even, as far as next steps, basically contact Scantech. We'll meet with you to review your files. We'll discuss options and make recommendations in indexing, unitization, some of the things we talked about. We like to take a sample file to scan and upload for a demonstration on Trino with your documents. It's always extremely helpful when you can see your documents in the document management system. And then at the same time, we'll provide you with a proposal outlining volume and cost estimates, timeline, and logistics. And it's important to note, we do this all at no cost and no obligation. It's pretty straightforward. So really that about wraps it up for our section. I'm going to turn it over to, if there's no other questions, to Jim. That Scantech and Trino have been partnered for many years. This is the Trino is the most affordable and progressive document management software on the market today, and we recommend this to all our customers who are looking at implementing a good cloud-based document management system. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Fox from Trino and let him talk to you a little bit about the Trino software and show you a quick demonstration.
Well, good morning, everyone. I appreciate your taking the time to join us this morning. And a little bit about Trino. We were founded in 2002, and we are based out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Everything about our software company is out of this one location, so all development engineering is from here. And Trino does provide, from a management perspective, that central secure repository where all electronic documents can be stored, all right? And we basically can set up a filing system that mirrors the system that you have in place. We can also make it very intuitive and easy to use. You'll see this as we go through the demo. And we do allow the ability to search by indexes that Tony was referring to. And an index search is very, very quick and allows you, and basically takes you to a document almost immediately. And again, as I had mentioned, we can store any kind of a file type. We are based on a user ID, so we can restrict what files, documents, folders a particular user can have permission to access. And we also then do provide a very, very detailed auditing capability so to maintain file history. Things like when someone hovers over a file to view a thumbnail, we're actually even tracking that level of detail. So we do provide very, very thorough audit trails. So we, again, are acting as that central secure repository, again, providing instant access to documents. We do integrate, and one of our strengths is the ability to integrate with third-party applications like an accounting system or a municipal application like Tyler or Munis, all right? And also MuniLogic, for instance. We also have a workflow component which allows you then to automate the approval and review process of documents as they come into the town. And we do provide that dynamic workflow routing so that based on information coming from a document, documents can be automatically routed to different people for review. Now, what Trino tries to take care of, you know that you have lots of different documents in the township. And there are all kinds of different documents related to the building department, to the public works, to the finance department, to constituency, ordinances, and so on. And so you have lots of different types of documents that need to be managed. Each one of these has a different retention policy, as Tony had alluded to in his own spreadsheet that they had put together. And your documents a lot of different types of documents, but they're also located in many different locations within the town. So there's not really a central spot for all the documents. Documents in the building department or in their area, town clerk obviously in their area. And what Trino then provides is the ability then to kind of get rid of the paper. So we can allow you then to be able to access documents that are across different departments. All right. With paper, it's administratively heavy to share and access. Moving a paper folder from desk to desk takes time, and it also can get lost. Paper is also very costly to store and takes up space, and this is where many of the townships are trying to free up a room and get rid of all the physical cabinets. And it also puts information at risk. There's no fire control at these points. These are paper documents. They are subject to water damage and things like that, and they certainly aren't secure. You may have a locked door to a particular room, but at that point, you really don't know who might be entering that room. And with an electronic solution, as you'll see, we can take care of that. All right, and as documents come in, they're also going through perhaps an approval process, and that's a physical movement of a document from desk to desk. And at that point, it's kind of a challenge to kind of keep track of where that folder is or where that document is. And it's also difficult to identify where that bottleneck is. It could be as simple as that somebody's out sick, and therefore that particular workflow has stopped because they're not available. And also, if it's paper, it's very complicated to audit. And with the Trino solution, as you'll see, we can do system auditing, tracking by user ID and date and time. Now, a lot of different back office documents that you maintain, we kind of reviewed a list earlier, and here's just another list of all the different kinds of documents that you all need to manage. All right. And what we do also provide is the ability to have e-forms, fillable forms, and these are documents that might sit on the town intranet or internet for that matter. And these are forms that a part of the public can fill out, things like a blight form, for instance, or a complaint form. And what happens with these forms is that the constituents can fill them out. Information is then sent into Trino, and then actually a workflow started to kind of go through an electronic process of document review. So again, towns and cities rely on Trino for a secure, confidential, central access to documents. They want to improve the access and efficiency to authorized users. Those could be the town users. You want to protect the document through their life cycle. Documents, as Tony had mentioned earlier, do have a retention cycle, and using a software tool like Trino, we can kind of help you with that. And we also are going to remove the cost of storage. With Trino, you don't have to worry about printing or faxing or any more photocopying, as you'll see. And we can improve internal productivity because of workflow, so that decision making and approval happens a lot quicker. And we can also provide town-wide access to critical documents by having something called a public portal, for instance, so that ordinances or budgets or minute meetings can be posted online for access by the public. All right. And again, we're going to remove that physical demand for storage area. And compliance, we can easily run system audit reports for compliance purposes. For instance, if there was a workflow process that started, finished up about 3 years ago, and 3 years from now you need to get information on what happened in that workflow process, we do maintain that workflow history, and so for compliance purposes, you have that background. All right. Now I'm going to jump into a demonstration and show you what Trino looks like. And so I'm going to click over here, and I'm going to go to a Trino login screen, and this is the Trino login screen for our hosted solution. And notice that the connection between the Trino server and the smartphone or tablet or PC for that matter is a secure link, 128-bit encryption, the same as you would have with accessing your bank account. And I'm going to log in as a user, and the user ID in Trino is very important, and it's through the user ID we do a couple of things. One, we determine what cabinets and folders and documents that a user has permission to access. Secondly, what can they do with those documents once they've been granted permission? And then thirdly, it's through the user ID that we're maintaining that very, very detailed audit trail. Now, when I logged in, I landed on my landing page, if you will, within Trino. And the first thing I'm looking at is a list of all the cabinets that I have permission to access. And one thing I want you to note is that Trino is a very horizontal product within the town. It can be used in AP and AR, the building department, the public works. It can be used to manage contracts, policies, even human resources. And as Tony had mentioned, a lot of towns, their first initiative for using a document management solution is primarily focused on land use and the property files. The second piece of information I want to look at when I log in is the workflows that have been assigned to me. So each one of these records right here represents a specific task that has been assigned to me for approval. Okay, and I'm going to click on a couple of folders here. The first one I want to click on is going to be like an AP cabinet, and I just want to show you some structure of the product and what makes Trino so fast and easy to use. This top part of the screen pertains to the folders. Each one of these records right here is the equivalent of a manila folder you might have in a physical cabinet. We index and label these folders by what we refer to as indexes, and they're right up in here: voucher number, vendor ID, doc number. All of these are user-defined indexes. You can have any number of these to help you organize your documents. And the key is that they're searchable fields. And if I would want to find my voucher 510, I can quickly type in the voucher number. Trino finds the folder right here, and then down below are the documents. And I'm just hovering over these documents. I'm not clicking on them. And if that is the document I want to look at, for instance, I can just click that row. Trino's going to open up in our virtual viewer, and here's a nice big picture of that electronic document that earlier was paper. Okay, we'll come back to the virtual viewer real quick. Now, we also have a global search capability and the ability to go across all of the folders, cabinets, documents that a user has permission and looking for that keyword. And Trino comes back with a report, and you'll see that it found it in several different cabinets: my policy cabinet, HR, AP cabinet. It can find it in several different places. It can find it in the index information. And here's an example: Patagonia Hospital. It can also find it in the file name, but most importantly, as Tony had alluded to, regarding OCR, here's an example of where that keyword was found in the document itself. It's not in the index information. It's not in the file name. I can click on it. Trino takes me directly to the folder, and here it is. It's highlighted, and I'm just hovering over that document, and that keyword is in fact in the content. So that's the power of the OCR. I'm going to go back out to our dashboard and just click into one other cabinet. Let's click into the land use cabinet, just to give you an idea. And again, in the land use area, we're identifying, each property has its own folder, and within that folder are going to be all the different document types. And here's an example. We have it indexed by the parcel number, maybe by the map, block, street, and so on. Again, you can have any number of indexes. These are searchable fields. Once I find my folder, down below then are the contents of this folder. And this is where Trino has introduced this idea of the tab, because within a building land use folder, for instance, you might have lots of different types of documents. And here we have a tab for the building records, maybe the inland and wetland records, the septic and health, the site plan, and so on. And then within that, we then have the further categorization of all the different types of documents that are part of the building record. All right, I'm going to click into another cabinet, Human Resources. And Human Resources, again, similar structure. It has indexes. These are just different index names because we're managing employees now, not properties. And again, these are searchable. So if I'm looking for employee 845, I can quickly find the folder, and down below are the contents. And again, this is where Trino has the idea of the tab to help logically organize documents. And again, you can have any number of these tabs. They're all user defined by the town for managing your own records. And based on user permission, if I were the director of training, for instance, for the town, I might be able to have access to the HR cabinet, all of the folders, but the only tab I would be able to see would be this training tab. I wouldn't even know that these other tabs existed as part of the folder. And again, these can carry forward in the public public works department. Let's go take a look at that, and let's go to the public works. And the public works, again, they have projects, and we have a project file folder, if you will, and identified by project description, location, the map number, the owner. And again, they're leveraging the use of tabs, and the tabs just have different names because we're managing different types of documents, okay? Now, Trino does have some easy ways to get documents into Trino. I'm going to jump back out, and I'm just going to go into my AP cabinet again. And within each folder, Trino has the ability, number one, to do an upload. So if I'm at the location where I want to bring a document in, I can just hit the upload button, go out and find the file that I want to bring in. I can select it, or I can do multiple files. And Trino quickly uploads them, and I can just bring them right into the file. So now I've got those two files have been uploaded and put into to this particular file. Every user has an inbox, and the inbox in Trino is where we basically are scanning paper, and every user has an inbox. And the way that works is that we map the scanners that you have so that the one button would go to my inbox, the two might go to Tony's. And so I can program the scanner that way. The documents then are scanned, converted to searchable PDFs, and now they're moved into Trino. And it's in here that they're waiting to be filed, okay? And the way that works, and let's just say this is a supporting document for Financial Voucher 510. I need to select my cabinet, and again, because I had permission to lots of cabinets, I have a drop-down. If I were in the Human Resource Department based on permission, I logged in, the only cabinet I would see would be the HR cabinet. I wouldn't even know that these other cabinets existed, and therefore I wouldn't even have a drop-down. So I'm just saying this is an AP. Trino finds the folder, the cabinet. Now I need to find the folder. I'm going to say this is going to voucher 888. And at this point, Trino is going to find that folder. And here it is, right here, 888. And now I can just file the document away. And I can do multiple documents at the same time. Now, Trino also has a desktop widget. So again, the inbox is a method to get documents into Trino. We also have desktop widget we call the Trino importer, and it's actually this widget that allows me to drag and drop Outlook email into Trino, so we can do that. It also allows me to drag and drop files from anywhere I have network access, okay? So again, the way that works with the email, and again, I have an email that pertains to employee Jim Fox. I can just drag it to the importer. The importer verifies who I am, what cabinets do I have permission to access, and at this point, I have a drop down. I'm going to say it's human resources. I need to search for the employee folder I want to put it in. I'm going to search for by name. Trino finds the folder, and now I need to add it to the select doc type. And notice how these map into the tabs, and I can just select email. This is the integration for email. We're bringing over the subject and the date, and then I can just do add, and then check it in. And now I can delete that email out of my inbox because now I have a permanent record of it in the employee folder, for instance. Okay, so the Trino importer, again, I can just turn that on and off. We do also have the ability, let me go back to Trino. We also have the ability to use barcodes, and Trino has ways of routing documents automatically into Trino using a barcode sheet. We also have the ability to start workflows using barcodes, and I can also direct documents to an inbox using the barcodes. And so the barcodes are part of the standard product, and they do help you offer another way to get documents into Trino. So there are numerous ways. We do integrate with third-party applications, as I had mentioned, like the municipal business line of application. We also have a fillable PDF component that we had talked about. I do have a workflow module, and every user in Trino has a workflow task list. And if workflows get started, they get assigned to people, and each person then can work workflows from their workflow task list, okay? And the way that works, if I can start a workflow real quick, and the way that usually starts is in the inbox, the document comes into the organization, and maybe it needs review. And so at this point, I have my document. I'm going to say it's an AP. And at this point, I need to show my search. I'm going to find my folder. And I need to find another number. Jeez. Bear with me. Let's try 509. Oh, maybe I might be able to do that today. Well, what would happen? I would typically, yeah, I would, and I'm not being successful, but I should have the ability to have a drop down to select a workflow. So I would select the documents, my folder, and I would select my workflow, and I can then file the document. And what happens then is a workflow task gets assigned, and here's a bunch of workflows that I have to be working on, and here's an active one that's been assigned to me. And the way that works, I can just click on that workflow task. Trino takes me directly to the folder that this workflow is on. So what happened, I tried to type in 509 earlier, and a workflow had already been assigned to it. So at this point, I can come into the folder and look at the documents, and then I can process the workflow. And our workflow, basically, this is one of the steps, and it allows me to look at the document in the workflow step. I have the ability to modify the indexes if I need to, and I can also add notes. And notice we're maintaining a workflow history down below that I had talked about earlier. And so everything that we had done earlier, I can see that, people were researching. I can see a note for that the transaction was under $500 and so on. I can now then make my entry, and this would be the final step in the workflow, but basically I can complete it, accept it, and this workflow goes on. Now, workflow can be a couple of different steps. It doesn't have to be just one. And when a workflow is completed, this Start Workflow button disappears from a user's view of a Trino folder. And again, they would just go back and keep working from the workflow. All right. So Trino is a very rich product, priced aggressively for small, medium businesses and towns. Our partner is Scantech, and we have been partners with them for many, many years and have lots of different customers in terms of townships, manufacturing, and so on. And we do offer lots of different kinds of modules to help you as you grow and start to use the product. And again, in terms of using Trino and implementing a project, we definitely recommend, as Tony had mentioned, a phased approach to maybe identify that one department that has the most paper, and therefore, you get the biggest bang for the buck in terms of moving forward with a scanning project. And at this point, I'm going to open it up to any questions if people have. And I'm going to unmute.
All right, Jim, I think we're about ready to wrap it up.
Okay, are there any questions that are out there?
I haven't seen any come through on my end, but if we're having a technical difficulty, Jennifer texted me, said she sent some questions, but I didn't see them come up. So if in fact we're having technical issues, we'll find out and address your questions and then publish them for everybody when we send out that landing page.
Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I thank everyone for their time, and Tony, thank you for yours. And we look forward to speaking with people and answering any questions that you all might have.
Yes, and again, folks, everybody look forward to receiving the landing page link from us. It'll have a recording of the presentation, as well as those spreadsheets for retention schedule management, and also the ROI spreadsheet we sent. And again, we'll address any questions that have come up as well. So thanks, everybody. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to being of service to you in the future.
Thank you.